All right, welcome to the Apex Vaulting Podcast. This is episode 102. For everybody that's listening, please share this podcast episode if you enjoy it and subscribe. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel, Apex Vaulting, or you can subscribe on iTunes Podcasts. Also, you can follow us on The Real Apex Vaulting on Instagram, and we're also Apex Vaulting on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have any comments or questions, you can reach out to us at apexvaulting@gmail.com. Today's episode, we have an awesome guest. I've known him for a long time, and he was ribbing me for not having him on the podcast earlier. Ethan Senecal. He has a lot of coaching experience. Also, was a very good athlete. He could hopefully speak about both of those things. But Ethan, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? You know, where you coach right now? What's your background? And then we can kind of talk about the topics that we want to discuss.
Yeah, thanks, Bronco, for finally having me on. It's been a few years. I think I've known you for at least 10 years now. But my name's Ethan Senecal. I'm the coordinator of cross country and track and field at Susquehanna University. It's a Division III program in central Pennsylvania. I grew up as a decathlete, started as a pole vaulter a long time ago and just kind of got into the other events. Started my coaching career in Rochester, New York at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Moved back to my alma mater, SUNY Brockport, for a few years, and then eventually moved my way down to Pennsylvania as a head coach at Marywood, and I've been at Susquehanna now going into my fourth year. It's been awesome. I would say pole vault's probably my passion along with multis, but as a coordinator of the program, there's a lot of things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis here.
Yeah. Well, and just to expand on a little bit your background, I think what's really interesting and awesome about your background, because you have head coaches who have all different types of backgrounds. A lot of times it's distance based, but with you, you are a pole vaulter. You did do the multis, and then even from a coaching background, starting out at RIT, you had Mike Dempsey, who I know it still kills him. He didn't exactly jump 17 feet. It was like 16-11 and whatever. But he was an awesome vaulter, and you groomed him. And then you went to Brockport, where now you expanded your role and you worked with a lot of different athlete groups and event groups. But also Brockport had a great pole vault group, which I know you and Andy Andy was the pole vault coach, but you worked together to help build that even better. And I think while you guys were there together, you guys had some monster groups of the vault. And obviously you're taking all that experience and knowledge to these different programs that you've been to since, including Susquehanna.
Yeah, it was awesome. When I moved back to my alma mater, Brockport, they just opened their new facility. I was brought in more so to run their meets. I was the horizontal jumps coach, and I handled a lot of the recruiting. Andy and I have worked together for a long time. I worked with him, with his club as well, but I was part of recruiting. So I recruited a lot of those vaulters that came in. Obviously, they had Zach Friar. He was a national champion while I was there. And while I can't take full credit for him, it was awesome to work with Zach on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I feel like I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, like Zach is a perfect example of like where I feel like it was such a team effort for that athlete to become who he became. Because a lot of people who, and maybe people don't know the name Zach Friar. He was a USA qualifier a couple of years ago. His PR is 17:10, but he was a guy that I think when he went into Brockport, was he like 13.6 PR?
Yeah, I remember I was actually coaching locally at a Brockport high school at the time. And I remember seeing him jumping, and he was just this little ball of lightning. He's so fast down the runway, had great technique in the takeoff. And I remember saying, like, when I first saw him, like, that kid's going to be really good someday. Yeah. I think he came into Brockport, probably was like 12.6, 13-ish PR, and just really put in the work every day, whether it be the weight room, on the track, in the gymnastics room, whatever he had to do, he did.
Right. And that's always something that I've always looked towards, like, talking about the Brockport program was like, you have Andy, the pole vault coach. He's doing the pole vault stuff. The strength and conditioning stuff was huge. And someone like Zach, you saw that physical transformation. Even one of my vaulters, Gabby Mercurio, who went up there, she went from 10 to 11.4. And the physical transformation is amazing too, because they really put an emphasis on strength and conditioning. And I know, right before we started this podcast, you were telling me about the weight room, and the program that you're doing right now at Susquehanna. And I know you're bringing that there. I think that's that's really, really important to have that holistic view of building an athlete. Because sometimes even I think for pole vaulters, you know, they may find a school where, all right, there's a good pole vault coach, but you're going to need that strength and conditioning part too, if you're really going to grow. And I think that was a huge part in Zach's development of going from that 12, 6, 13 to, you know, eventually, you know, even post collegiately 17, 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the formula is simple. You can't get faster. You can't jump higher if you don't get stronger.
Right.
And obviously there's a lot of different ways to get stronger. But I mean, his commitment into the weight room, you can see both physically,
Yes,
to see it, how much he matured throughout his career. And it allowed him to, you know, get his takeoff further back and get on bigger poles because he was stronger and he was faster. So yeah, it was awesome to work with him. And then there was a lot of others that came through the program throughout those years. And I took everything I learned at that program and kind of molded what I wanted my philosophy to be. And it has worked out great. You know, our program's doing really well now. Huge emphasis on the weight room. And it's not just vaulters, it's across the board, from distance runners, throwers, sprinters, jumpers, you name it. We lift 3 to 4 times a week and we really get after it because you can't improve if you don't get stronger.
Right.
So that's a really, really big pillar of our program.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important. I still remember one time I went to the Akron pole vault summit or convention when they were doing that, and I remember one year seeing Zach, and there was like one year there was a stark difference in his physique, and I remember I was like, dude, it's like his chest was out to here, his butt was out to there. I was like, that's it. I'm gonna just bench and deadlift. That's it. You know, I want to look like Zach. You know, but I mean, yeah, I think, you know, that's certainly a very important piece. And well, I mean, I guess we can start this way and then we can talk about recruiting in a little bit. But since we're already talking about strength and conditioning, when you think about fall training, you know, I just did a podcast episode and I've been posting a little bit about how important fall training is to pole vaulters, and maybe we can speak specifically about pole vault. But, you know, it's like baseball has spring training. The NFL, they have training camp in the summer. I always feel like fall is that perfect time of year for a pole vaulter to really, really go back to basics, really work on some fundamentals. And like we're talking about right now is build that strength and conditioning that sometimes, you know, and again, we can discuss this too. Sometimes I know it's difficult to really lift hard during the season. So fall is a perfect time to really build up that strength. I mean, what are your thoughts about fall?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a hypertrophy phase right now where we're working on really, you know, gaining muscle, getting bigger. That's for the whole team, not just the vaulters, but they're on the same program. And just really, you know, we focus on a few main lifts. You know, we're doing our back squats, our bench press, and our deadlift. Deadlift's really important. We're one of the few sports I think that does deadlift at our university. We're kind of on our own separate program here. I see a lot of the posterior chain work, how it affects the running mechanics and how important it is for us. So in the weight room, we're doing a lot of heavier stuff currently. You know, we're not doing we're shooting for around 5 reps. So usually we're doing a max of like 80 to 85% of our you know our max for any of the lifts, but we're looking at around 5 reps for most of our workouts currently, and we'll eventually work down to 3 and then 1. But as far as like actual training goes in the vault, you're right.
Well,
you know,
before you continue, I just if someone were to ask you, because I kind of mentioned these offhand like numbers to shoot for, like I always talk for pole vaulters, lats are super important, right? For what you're doing on the pole. And I always say, if you could do 50% of your body weight in a weighted pull-up, that's a pretty good number to shoot for. And then I always say for like the lower body lifts, I mean, you know, you've seen, I'm sure, plenty of literature. I always say like a good goal eventually for someone is double body weight for a lower body lift. I mean, what would you say are kind of like goals? Because I remember one time touring Ohio State and they're like their strength and conditioning room for the football team. And it was amazing because they had these like, not leaderboards, but like numbers to shoot for, but it was like to be on the team, to be a starter, and then like Hall of Fame numbers. And it was like, oh, wow, like that's what you need. So what are some numbers that you would say to a pole vaulter? It's like, if you're really trying to be fast on the runway, if you're really trying to be efficient with your swing and push off, like what are some numbers in the weight room that might help?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's so much that goes into the vault. You know, you mentioned swing up, that's going to be a strong core. Obviously the higher your squat is, the stronger your core is going to be, because you need to support that weight.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, I'll be honest, I've never really looked at exact numbers, but if I was to sit here and I've got my max sheet literally sitting right next to me of all of our kit maxes, it's right next to me and I can look at it every day. You know, I would probably say our pole vaulters for back squat specifically are between 150 and 200%. of their body weight.
Right.
I would, that's probably the number they shoot for. Deadlift is going to be closer to 200%. Bench press is not really a good indicator of all that. I don't think it's not as much of a functional movement as I think the squat.
What about Zach? I think Zach benched something crazy. That's
Oh, well, there's always exceptions to the
I
rule.
know. I was just
Yeah, I think Zach was, I think, over 300 pretty early in his college career. I don't remember off the top of my head though. But yeah, I definitely think squat and deadlift are very important. We do a lot of cleans, whether it be hang clean, actual cleans from the floor. We'll do some snatch pulls. We don't actually do full snatches, but we do some Olympic variations of lifts. But honestly, deadlift, squat are the two biggest lifts for me as far as an indicator of where an athlete might be. A lot of that comes straight from how fast they're going to be. If your squat and deadlift are high, you should be faster.
Right.
So those are great indications. And I do want to make sure, like, anyone listening, like, don't just jump under the bar and start throwing weight on because you want to be strong. Like, we build up to everything. We make sure, like, test our athletes early on. We'll either do like a 5-rep test or a 3-rep test to kind of get an idea where their max is. And then we train off of a training max. We don't use their actual max for training. We go off 90% of their max, and we make sure that their form is correct because that's extremely important. We're always paying attention to safety, making sure we've got spotters and all that type of stuff. But absolutely, the squat, deadlift to me are the most important lifts. And if I had to put a number on it, probably between 150 to 200% is going to be a good indicator where you are.
No, and absolutely. And like you said, it's not that you can't just slap the weight on the bar and try, right? You have to work up towards it. And like you said already, it's like your team is lifting 3-4 times a week, and it's consistently week after week, and you just keep grinding. I saw a quote. I don't know if you've ever heard of Greg Panora. He's a power lifter, but he had this like one line where he posted on Instagram this summer where it's like, you're going to get a lot more. He goes, I know that you're not going to like to hear this, but you're going to get a lot more from like 1,000 shitty workouts than one amazing one. And it's like, people have to have that idea of like, it's not always going to be fun. You're not always going to like PR. You're not going to always kill it in the weight room, but it's like to put that work in so that you can reach those numbers that you're talking about, like 150 to 200% of your body weight in a lower body lift. That's what you have to do, is just keep grinding. I think it's super important.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a similar quote. I say, like, without bad days, there wouldn't be good. If every day was a good day, that'd be a miracle. It'd be a perfect world. You need those bad days to struggle through to really get those rewards.
Yeah, 100%. So you were going to go into pole vault technique. So what do you like to do in fall with vaulters?
So unfortunately, due to NCAA regulations, we are limited to how many weeks we can work with our student athletes. I'm very fortunate. The way I coach is I always asking questions. Why do you think you need to do this? Why are we doing this drill? I explain drills to them. So then our seniors can then run, their practices in the fall. So what we have currently is our upperclassmen, they'll run jumping days with our student athletes. We really like to focus on the run. The run is extremely important to us. I like to look at the vault in different sections. You've got your A, your B, your C, and your D. A is going to be your run, B is your takeoff, C is going to be your swing, and D is your top end. Without a good A, can't have a good B. So we like to work it from the beginning. So we do a lot of runs and a lot of short stuff. We really take it back to the basics. We'll do some drills maybe with banana hurdles or wickets to really focus on posture, running with the pole correctly, and just starting from the beginning again, I like to use the short to long approach. Early season, even once we start practice, we're only going to be doing short approaches, maybe 3, 4s, 5s, might get up to a 6. And then as that season progresses, we like to extend it out to like your 6, 7s, and 8s. And I know there's different opinions on that. Some people like to do full runs all the time. I like to work on technique from a short run because you can get more reps in and it's easier on your body. As a coordinator, I'm always conscious about injuries. And if you're beating on a kid every day, doing long runs every day, jumping every day, there's a higher risk of injury. So we need to make sure we take care of athletes. And I like the shorter stuff early. We love to use the fall to take advantage of that, to be able to get out 2 or 3 days a week, jump from like maybe a 3-step over a bungee. But a lot of times they're really just working on that run and takeoff. That's really what I want to see.
Well, I think also what I find interesting is when you have a background in strength and conditioning and you understand the human body more, and not just from a muscular level, but a central nervous system level, you understand, like you said, if you're constantly hitting that long run, that's really, really hard on the CNS and you're going to fry someone. Now, I guess you could do things to modify the long run so it's not as hard. Like maybe you move the run in a few feet, you lower the grip, you smaller pull. But I always say it's like, hey, the way I control the CNS is by your approach. If I keep you at threes, there's no way you're going to get fried. You could probably do a 3 almost every day if you really, really wanted to, right. Whereas you can't do that from, 7, 8, 9, So I think that's really important. Like once you start to wrap your head around the CNS thing, the central nervous system fatigue, and you understand that and how that works. Because I think most people don't even understand, like when you do something that's really, really intense, you need at least, 72, 78 hours recovery. And
depending on how taxing it was. Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, and then if you keep not respecting that time frame, it's like that even like makes that recovery period longer. Cause I've seen athletes on the vault side that if they've tried to do long run too often, it might take like a week, 2 weeks to really see them bounce back fully, I mean, what's your experience with that as far as the central nervous system fatigue?
So one of the philosophies we have here at Susquehanna, and I've carried this through with me, is hard days are hard. So hard days are hard, easy days are easy. You need those recovery days to make sure your body's rested for injury prevention, mental health, all that stuff. So for an example, let's say we lift on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Those are our lifting days. So therefore, I like our athletes to vault on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Friday, because vault days typically end up being harder days.
Right.
So maybe on Monday, if they were to practice every day, Monday might be like an easy like core day. Maybe do a little, jog here and there. Tuesday, they're going to go jump. They're going to come into the weight room after they jump, and they're going to be tired. Wednesday might be even harder day. We're not sure, but that when we get to Thursday needs to be an easy day.
Right.
Because if we've had 2 hard days in a row, we need to make sure that we're recovering, doing what we need to, so our body, replenishes all of its nutrients and resets kind of from the chemical standpoint. As you talk, the CNS, the central nervous system, is extremely important. And I see a lot of programs that might do like a workout on a Monday, and then they lift heavy on Tuesday, and then maybe they have a dual meet on a Wednesday, and then they're working out again on Thursday, and then Friday they're gearing up for a big invite. So every day is hard. There's no time for your body.
Right.
And that's a lot of the times when your central nervous system starts to break down, you start seeing some injuries pop up, whether it be hips, lower leg injuries, those types of things.
Right. Well, and especially in an event like the pole vault, there's so much coordination involved. That's where it's like, okay, the plant starts to get a little bit late or a little bit off. You can't set up the takeoff like you want to. And then because those technical components are not working, I think that even causes, technique breakdowns, and then that leads to injury as well. So we kind of went off into a tangent on the CNS, but so going back to like what you were talking about, how you treat like early season training for your vaulters. And it's funny, I just did the podcast episode with Eric Bennett, and I feel like I've always done posts about this on social media. It's like, you view the vault in segments. You have these different components, right? You went A, B, C, D, and it's like, I think that's super, super important. And especially in early season training, you have to have ways of training those segments and isolate them. Like, you were talking about like the going over baby hurdles or wickets. What are some other type of things that you work on? Like, how do you isolate maybe some of those other segments?
Yeah, I mean, obviously each section can come with, their different type of drill. Obviously with your swing, you can go into the weight room. Maybe if you have rings, you can do some bubkas to work on that swing. Different rock back drills. There's lots of different equipment out there that you can use to practice that stuff. Different drills, whether on the mat, there's a lot of different things you can do for your swing drills. Top end, there's some interesting drills you can do for top end. Some people, you can get in the pool and do some top end drills with like the underwater vaulting. That's going to be really easy on your body. So you could call it an easy day, but we're still getting technique in, if that makes sense. So you're still working on those components for the vault, but you're not beating your body up. So rather than take 20 jumps trying to go over a crossbar and make it look good, you're underwater, slowing things down, going through the movements, and you're not beating your body up. That's important. And then the run, obviously, sprinting workouts, different mechanics that you can work on throughout your run, actual pole runs, those types of things. Takeoffs, you can do some wall plants and things like that for takeoff drills, but a lot of times the best way to work on takeoffs is to do it
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. So you can segment the jump and then pick different days that kind of cater to when you need to be a hard day, when you need to be an easy day. And ultimately that helps your body, develop, because muscle memory is a heck of a thing. If
Yeah.
you continue to do bubkas every day and you try to challenge yourself, especially I see it in young female athletes a lot. Sometimes they struggle in the beginning trying to get those hips up, but if they do it every day, after a month, they can do 3 in a row. And then after 2 months, they're up to 5 to 10 in a row,
Yeah.
and then that will translate directly to when they start jumping.
Right. And when I think about, a lot of times it's like GPP versus SPP, right? So it's like general prep and then specific. And it's like, sure, like I think you've got to use your general exercises like pull-ups, push-ups, bench press, whatever. But yeah, now it's like you have all those little muscles, and the way the muscles are working to, let's say, perform a bupka, you have to do that. You know what I mean? Like you have to get on a high bar or rope or rings, like you said. You can perform the exercise there and work on it. And that ultimately is going to lead you to have a lot more success when you get back on the runway and try to actually swing up.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. You're getting into some pretty specific training terms when you say like, GPP and SPP, but those are things that we have worked into our, our weight training as well. Little subtle exercises we do with our auxiliary lifts that also, apply to the different event groups that we have.
Right.
But you're right. You work on every little thing now, and then as the season comes, it just starts to all come together.
Yeah, it blends together. And I know you're like smiling when I say GPP and SPP, but it's like, I think the more information, like, I don't know, this is how I think about it, Ethan. It's like, I'm trying to put out this information because I know there's a lot of coaches that don't know what GPP and SPP are. They don't know a lot about the strength and conditioning world. And the thing is, the more they can learn about that, I feel like it's going to help them become better pole vault coaches. Because I remember, like, so you're going to think I'm crazy, but I used to go to like FedEx Kinko's when I was a young coach, and I would literally just print shit out, anything I could find on pole vault and track, and I would make my own spiral bound books, right? And I remember, in fact, I had one binder that I made it was a picture of Carl Lewis on the front, like full sprint, like he's already come out of the drive phase, like he's just nice and tall, and it's like, it's picture perfect. I mean, it's like good running form. And I would just have all this info, about his training. And then I got into like Ben Johnson and the Charlie Francis system. And the thing is, like, the more I looked into that training, it started to impact my coaching of the vault. Like, I think even the way you're describing, like breaking down the vault and the different segments. And I agree with you too, like working on takeoff, there's no better way to work on takeoff than actually on the runway. The thing though, is like, you can modify it. You could do it from 1 left, 2 left, 3 left, 4 left, overhead carry, low carry, high carry, right? Like there's all these little variables that you can add depending on what your athlete's weaknesses or strengths are to try to help them improve. And it's like, that's why it's like, I try to put these like kind of, I guess, nuggets of information into the podcast, because I think the more those coaches can understand that and start to see the vault as like a physical endeavor instead of a magic trick. Because I feel like too many people in the pole vault world, they think it's a magic trick. Like I saw, and no disrespect, but Liza McCartney, the New Zealand pole vaulter, she got bronze at not this past Olympics before, but there's like this video that always like resurfaces of her where they have like this pole set up where she like holds on right here, and this like machine just like lifts her up, and she
saw it like 2 days ago. It just popped up on my feed 2 days ago.
Right. It always resurfaces this time of year, and I'm like, dude, it's like, she's basically doing a high bar exercise or something you could do on a rope or rings. It's like, but you're adding the pole and it lifts her up, 15 feet in the air. And it's like, do you need to do that? Like, but again, it's like that gimmicky type thing. And it's like, I wish people would like get away from the gimmicks and start to focus on like the real work and effort. Like, to be honest, I even think like a lot of the people who, are resistant to like, let's say, strength and conditioning work for pole vaulters, I think they're resistant to it because strength and conditioning work can be boring. It is hard. You know what I mean? Like, you have to just, it's a lot of elbow grease, where it's like, I'd rather just buy something, that like promises me to PR, and I just like hang on a bungee type cord thing, holding onto a rope. And I did 5 of those, like I should PR, right, Ethan?
Well, I think that's kind of the American way, the instant gratification. We want the easy fix and we want it now. But no, you're right. The hard work comes in the weight room. I think I'm sure you know all the numbers. And by the way, I know that you're crazy. I knew that long before we started. But if you look at the numbers, I mean, the meters per second an athlete's running once at takeoff is extremely important in the vault. The faster you are, the higher you're going to jump. And how do you get faster? Get stronger. You know,
right.
And that's the bottom line. You could get stronger just from running, or you could get faster just from running every day. You start working in some resistance training, focusing on different types of, muscle groups here and there, like you're going to get faster. And if you get faster, you jump on bigger poles. And what happens when you jump on bigger poles? You go higher.
Yeah,
right?
You jump higher.
It's usually how physics works.
Yeah.
But I guess with the all the terminology and stuff that you're talking about, I'm used to talking to 17 to 22-year-old, young adults. I don't talk to coaches really on a daily basis about training. So I tend to dumb a lot of the stuff I have down to relate to them. But everything you're saying is correct. We use those same principles, in our day-to-day training. And I guess if once coaches can grasp those concepts, they'll really be able to start developing great programs for their athletes so they can really improve.
Right. Yeah. 100%. And I think even like from the athlete standpoint, it's interesting because I had a guy come in last week. It's one of our adult clients. He just started with us. He's post-collegiate. He's just a guy that wants to jump kind of for fun and see how high he can jump. And he started asking me about all these different training systems, right? So I'm sure what is it? Cal Dietz, the Triphasic System.
Yeah, Triphasic.
Yeah. So it was funny. The guy's asking me about the Triphasic System, and I'm like, dude, I'm familiar, with that system. And I go, but let me ask you a question. I'm like, now this is an adult male. He probably weighs 150 pounds. I'm like, what's your best squat ever? And he goes 205. And I'm like, dude, I don't think you have to get that complicated. You could literally just do sets of 10. There you go. Triphasic chart. But it's like, I tell people something is like, you don't have to get that complicated. Like people try to get fancy too quick sometimes too. Like even with this training, like people will Google, like, let's say like a strength and conditioning program. And it's like, it's got all these percentages and slow on the way down, explosive on the way up, or, fast on the way down, slow on the way up, a pause, this bands, chains, blah, blah. And they start to get wild. And it's like, okay, just squat. And when you hit a decent enough number, then we can start to get a little bit fancier and talk about what you need to do to push that number up. And I feel like, again, even going back to the pole vault stuff, like that Liza McCartney video of like that thing, the pole that's really
cool. It looks really cool. It looks like a lot of fun.
Right.
How many people are going to have access to that?
Right. Well, yeah, access is one. Two, also, I can't imagine somebody trying to rig that thing on their own and figure it out, how dangerous that could end up being. But here's the thing, it's like, do you need that? You know what I mean? Like you can do that in a lot simpler way and actually work on the movement and also get stronger. You know what I mean? It's like before people get fancy, they've got to get those basics down. And again, I guess to kind of bring it back to how we started with this, it's like fall is a perfect time to go back to basics. You don't have a conference championship that you're trying to prep for in a week or two. You don't have anything else that's psychologically in your mind. You're not worried about, and I guess this is how I'll segue, you're not worried about Ethan Senecal coming to watch you at your county meet because you're trying to go to Susquehanna, right? Yeah. So you can kind of really, really focus on those basics in the fall. Now, that being said, I mentioned recruiting. I said to you before the podcast started, this is also a time of year where I get a lot of athletes and parents talking to me, either their son or daughter, or the kid is a junior or senior in high school. And they're like, start asking me questions about pole vault. Like, hey, I'd like to pole vault in college. What do you think I need to jump? Or, what are colleges looking for? Maybe you can speak to that. I mean, and not just about Susquehanna, but maybe kind of give us a full picture of like, what are college programs looking for and how high do I need to jump in college? What do you think about those kind of questions?
I mean, those are all, we hear those questions a lot. And I think the number one thing that either a prospective student athlete or the family needs to realize is, what do you want to study in school? That is the number one thing that you need to figure out, or at least to feel. You might not know exactly what you want to do, but you need to kind of figure out, do I want to go into sciences? Do I want to go into education? Because that will really kind of be able to narrow down some schools for you.
Right.
And then once you can kind of figure out where you want to go, because obviously every school is going to have its niche, whether it's a state school or a private school, they're going to have their niche. Right. Susquehanna University has a great business program. But we've also got a great creative writing program along with great sciences, great journalist program. But other schools, across the country, especially some of the New Jersey state schools, some schools are going to have great nursing programs.
Right.
Some schools are going to have great engineering programs.
Right.
So you need to make sure you figure out what you want to study first, because, while you want to pole vault in college, there's always that chance that you could get hurt,
Right.
and if you can't vault in college, you want to make sure you're getting a good education. And that's Division 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
The next thing you kind of want to look at, in my opinion, is coaching. You want to make coaching and facilities. I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that university has a facility where you can practice. Coaching, you need to make sure you have a pole vault coach. If there's no one there that's really knowledgeable, it's going to be tough. I know with clubs, there's a lot of people that are practicing with clubs nowadays, and that's awesome. But I still think, in my personal opinion, it's better to have a coach on site at the university. I think that is a huge plus. Poles is really important.
Yes.
You need to make sure that school has the poles that you need to be successful. So many schools, and I'm not going to name any names around us, but there's, some state schools near us that only have 15-foot poles for guys. So,
Right.
if you're a male that's jumping on poles 14 foot, you're SOL. You're not
Yeah.
going to get up there. You're going to have to get a lot stronger, almost get hurt in order to do it.
Yeah.
Being the coordinator of the program, I'm very fortunate. I control the budget, so I'm able to purchase whatever poles I need, and I don't
Right.
have to answer to anybody, which is awesome. So, in the past 3 years since I've been here, we've filled the complete series from 13 to 15 feet.
Right.
Granite poles, which is awesome. So I think those are the main things. You need to look at academic programs, number one, facilities, coaching, and then availability of equipment. Those are all extremely important. Once you can kind of figure that out, then you can start thinking, all right, am I D2, am I D3, D1? I've found, as I've moved further south into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, there's a lot of athletes that think they're scholarship athletes.
Right.
What that means is a lot of the schools you're going to go to are going to pay for your books. That's the bottom line. There's very few full rides for just pole vaulters.
Right.
There's not many of them.
Yeah.
And if you are able to get one of those full rides, that is amazing. Congratulations, you earned it. But I think academics needs to be number one. I think that, make sure you go see as many schools as you can, because there's going to be a very different feel if you're going to look at, a Rutgers, New Brunswick, compared to, I guess, a Ramapo. Those are going to be very different feels as types of schools. And it's important that you feel comfortable on that campus, because once again, I'll go back to, say for some reason you can't compete, you need to be happy in that environment.
Right.
So those, to me, are the main things you need to look at. Once you narrow down your schools, I think it's important that you try to go on an overnight. I know with COVID, it is, it's a little limiting right now with what schools are offering overnights. I will say Susquehanna University is open for overnight visits. We actually have our first one in 2 years this coming weekend. So schools are starting to open back up, and I encourage those student athletes to go on those visits, go on those overnights, get to know your teammates, because those are the people you're going to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you get along with them in order to be happy.
Yeah.
If you're not happy at the university, you're not going to be successful either in academics or athletics.
Yeah. Well, so you brought up a bunch of stuff that I want to touch upon. I guess I'll go in reverse order. I mean, the last thing that you just mentioned, I think that's huge, right? Like, do you fit into the culture of that team and university or college? It's like, because like you said, one, the academics have to line up. So if you go to a school where, like, let's say you're really into engineering and you want to really be sciencey and just like really geek out and all that stuff, and you go to a school that, it has engineering, but it's not that focused, or that doesn't have your academic needs, that's not going to work. Also, let's say, hey, you really want to train hard, you want to jump as high as you possibly can, and you go to a team that, I mean, let's just face it, they have a huge party atmosphere. It's kind of like a school where people they end up making it there and they kind of just hang on for 4 years. That's not going to be the right team atmosphere. Like, going back to the example, like, I mean, again, I know the type of person you are, and I know the kind of ship that you run. So, but I'll use a former place that you went, Brockport. Like, that was like a grinding team. Like, if you wanted to grind and see how high you could jump, that was a perfect spot. And I'm sure you're doing the same thing at Susquehanna. So that's going to work. So you have to see what fits. Because I know even me at Ramapo over the years, I would say I was not the best recruiter. Because even if someone was talented and they came, I made sure they knew. It was like, hey, if you're coming to Ramapo because you want to get a good education and you'd like to jump as high as you can, and you're going to grind, awesome. If you're coming for any other reason, probably not going to work out. You know what I mean? Like if you just want to goof off and whatever, this is not going to be a good mix. The chemistry is going to be off. The other thing I wanted to mention, like you brought up poles, I think that's so huge. Like you said, if you go to a school that they just have those 15-foot poles, not only it's like, even if you do jump on 15-foot poles, what are you going to do other than your long run? I guess you're just stuck with just straight pole drills. Like you can't do anything short. So that makes it very difficult. And I know a lot of times, like I'll tell my athletes, like, listen, you may have someone tell you, oh, we'll buy all the poles you need. That's real easy to say. It's a different thing to do, because I can't tell you how many athletes I've had who were promised that. And then when they get to campus, it's like, well, we can get you one or two. And I mean, hopefully everybody listening to the podcast, like first of all, there's a big difference between one or two. And then also it's like, that's still not enough. Like for a vaulter who's jumping decent, you need more poles than that. The question I wanted to ask you, and I want to give you two scenarios. Okay. Let's say I'm a high school girl. I'd really like to jump in college. My PR is 8.6. Okay. And then I'll give you the other end of the spectrum. Let's say I'm a high school boy. I jump 15.6. I want to jump in college. What advice would you give to either of those about, what is it going to take to get on a college team? What's the right place for me to be? Let's address that 8.6 girl first. What would you say to that?
Well, if I was going to do like Susquehanna specifically, we'll just stick with my scenario. First thing I'm going to ask is what their grades are. Susquehanna is a very high achieving academic school. Our women's GPA last year was, I think, a 3.7. Last semester was a 3.7 team GPA. So we're very strong achieving. So I'm going to ask, how are your grades? Make sure that fits for us. I'm going to ask them like what they do for vault. Unfortunately, I do know a lot of the clubs in the area. Right. So I kind of have an idea of how they jump. And I ask them like, what's your style? A big question I always ask, do you count up or down? That's a big question I always ask all of our kids, just to kind of see where they're at, where their head's at with the vault, see how much knowledge they have themselves. Yeah. And then, get into the different programs. Now, we're fortunate. Our conference is kind of wide open in the vault. So 8.6 could potentially score in our conference. So with a little bit of development, 10 feet, definitely scoring in our conference. So I'm going to sell that as, listen, you could come in, put some work in, you could be a contributor right away. Now if we were to say it was like I'm going to change your scenario here and say it was like a 10-foot guy. 10-foot guy is not scoring in the conference. But if it's someone, maybe they have potential as far as they're tall, or, they have some markers that show they could improve a lot. Then I'm gonna say, if you're going to come in every day and you want to work hard, we'll take the chance on you, But like you said, like we don't take those people that want to come here just for a good time. We have certain policies. We do not do overnight visits between Thursday and Sunday. You can come on Sunday nights, but you cannot come on the weekend. We're against that, for the reason of, if you want to come to our university just to hang out on the weekend, you're not going to be a good fit for our program.
Right. No, I think that's a really good protocol for you guys. Yeah. And I want to just say too, I think this is great, like what you're saying, because I think a lot of times people falsely think, like, I mean, listen, we're going through a great time period in the vault where it's like it seems like every other high school boy is jumping like 17 plus. And every other high school girl is jumping 14, right? So if you are that girl that jumps 8.6, or you even brought up a high school boy jumping 10 or 11, right? It's like, you may think it's like, wow, I guess like I just can't jump in college, but you can find a place where, like you said, it's like, if you're willing to come in and do the work. And that's what I always tell people, because I even, this was maybe 5 years ago, I had a girl that graduated high school. Her PR was only 7.6. She was a tiny little thing. But she was a really nice kid, really sweet. And she actually went to, I guess it's Delaware Valley State. That's in PA, right? And, the head coach there wasn't a pole vault guy, but, he was really hard worker too, as a coach. And he helped that girl any way she could. She ended up jumping 9.10. You know what I mean? She had a great time training and jumping, got a good education. She wanted to be a veterinarian. I guess they have a strong veterinarian program there. So it's like, it works. So it's like, you can find a school. It's like, you don't have to be like an elite vaulter to jump in college,
I think what it is I think they get that perception of, if I'm not Division I, why do it? And the D3 mentality, it's all about inclusion. It's for those individuals that absolutely love a sport and want to get education. D3 athletes aren't going to any college for the money. They're not, that's not
Right.
part of, the mission of Division
Right.
III. They're going there to get a good education. And if you can compete and have fun doing it, that's a huge bonus.
Right. Right.
And you're 100% correct. And depending on the schools you look at, there's going to be some D3 schools that are going to have higher standards depending on what conference they're in. But there's some D3 schools where some of their girls' PRs might be 6 feet. And but the reason being, they probably don't have a pole vault coach, and they probably don't have any poles. That's a big part of that.
Yes. Yeah.
And completely opposite, the conversation I would have with the 15-6 guy is, what am I going to do to make them a national champion? Obviously that individual has competed at a high level already. We're still going to go through, what academic major are you looking for? What's your GPA? Are you going to be able to, cut it here? Our men's GPA was a 3.34 last semester. So they're also high academically achieving.
Right.
So we need to make sure that they fit in that niche as well. But then I'm going to explain, listen, I get people to that level. And when we get to that meet, I make sure they perform well. I, as a coach, know how to get people to perform well at the big competitions.
Right.
And if you come here, we're going to have X, Y, and Z polls for you. We're going to make sure if we need to order 16s, we'll order 16s. We're going to go through the process of, we're going to make sure we do everything we can so that you're successful. Right. But I will also say this, I found out a long time ago that hard work trumps talent every day of the week. Yeah. You might be the best athlete in the country, but if you got a bad attitude and you don't want to work hard, you're not going to amount to much. Yeah. So in some certain cases, I would rather take that 11-foot guy that I know is going to show up to lift every day and grind. He's going to do what he needs to in study hall to make sure his grades are on point, and he's going to be a good teammate. Those are really important pillars for our program. Yeah. And just making sure that everybody's on that same page. I want to make sure that our if we had an 11-foot guy and our 15-foot guy, are all getting the same work in at practice, the same amount of reps, they're getting the same amount of treatment. That's a really important, part of my coaching philosophy, and it is sometimes the D3 model. That's what it is, but we talked about Zach Friar earlier. Look what he did. He went from 13 to almost 18 feet, in his career, so that development's there if you want to put the work in.
Right. And talk about, personality and mindset. I mean, Zach is great. I mean, what a positive person, and definitely put in the hard work and effort. And going back to what you said, even about the Division III mentality, it's funny, I'm wearing a David Goggins t-shirt, and it's like, I love David Goggins. And there's one video he put out where he's like, listen, I'm not going to the Olympics, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, but I still grind. And I think that mentality of sure, you may not be elite level, but having the discipline in your life to train, to have the scheduling, I think that's huge, because I think a lot of times even a high school kid that goes to college and doesn't have a sport, they all of a sudden have a lot more free time. And all of a sudden, those are the kids that they get close to the end of the semester, and it's like, oh shit, I have a lot of papers due. I have all the stuff I didn't do. Whereas a lot of the times with athletes, because they have the schedule of training and they have a lot more on their plate, they know it's like, okay, I can't lag behind. I can't take for granted the time. And the thing is, that's better preparing them for adult life. Because as you become an adult, it's like you realize, no, I can't just lounge around all day. I have things I have to get done. There's a lot on my plate. And if I don't take care of things when I'm supposed to, I'll never catch up. Those are just things that are left undone, No,
you're 100% correct. The time management skills that we teach as student athletes is extremely important as they develop into contributing members of society. And one thing that you touched on, I'm trying to remember what it was now, going back in my brain. But it was something along the lines of, I'm blanking. I can't remember what it was. It was not the, sorry, someone's knocking on my door too. It's distracting me.
Something that I just said?
Yeah, somebody just said it was about,
just not, even though I can't be an Olympian.
Nah, something about grinding, but whatever. Teaching these kids, to be positive, contributing members of society is extremely important. I know it was the GPAs. You mentioned someone that has all the free time, on their hands. That basically, I've learned that we'll have student athletes that might quit because they want to focus on academics. Right. It's a well-known stat across all of the colleges, not just Susquehanna, but all the colleges, that a student athlete will have a higher GPA of about 0.2 of a point than a non-student athlete. Yeah. And I know here at Susquehanna, it's even higher. It's almost a half a point. Student athletes have a higher GPA than non-student athletes, because you're right, they don't have to worry about, all right, I have practice at 4 o'clock. I know I have lift at 6. I got to get my work done before 2 o'clock, and I got to eat. It's like, oh, I'm going to stay up and play Fortnite for a few hours, go to bed at 3. It's just different, but it prepares them for the real world and jobs and whatnot.
Well, it's funny. I mean, there's like that old saying, that cliche that I don't know if people even think deeply about, but it's like idle hands are the devil's playground, right? Yeah. It's like if you have nothing to do, you waste a lot of time or get yourself into trouble. And I think that's exactly right. Like a student athlete, they know they need to get 8 hours sleep, or try to get at least 8 hours sleep. They know that they've got to schedule out their meals because they've got class, they've got workouts, they've got to study, they've got to write papers, right? So everything starts to get more planned out. I know even personally, it's like, it's funny, like this past summer, kind of through, I think mid to late August, starting, I think the weekend before July 4th, it's like, I didn't have a single day off. I was going straight through the summer. And even there was like a youth track camp that was thrown in one week. So I was like working like from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m., and it was like, I got a lot of work done. It was, I almost felt more productive then than I do now in the fall, because I have a little bit of time. So it's like, I'm like, I have a little bit of time to relax here. And it's like, yeah, that's where you kind of trick yourself. You think you have time, but you really don't, you have to use that time. And I think that shows, like you said, that's an alarming stat that I think a lot of people don't know. It's like, man, student athletes have a 0.2 GPA higher than a non-student athlete. It's like, that's crazy, because you're right. You'll hear even parents sometimes say, well, I think, Johnny needs to take time off of sport, and focus on school. Good luck. I don't know if they're going to focus on school.
It's not how it works. It's never,
they might focus on, like you said, Fortnite or, Snapchat, or, I don't know if they're going to focus on school, So, I want one more thing. We can do this quickly. You've also, over the years, been involved in the Rockback beach vault, and a wonderful, wonderful event. I think it's one of the best events that I attend. I think, you guys have always done a great job. Like the meet moves, you run the meet as smoothly as possible. I think also the music, you this summer you weren't involved, but you usually announce. You do a great job. What are your kind of like pieces of advice for people who want to run a successful pole vault event that's fun and exciting? Because I'll get people hitting me up and they're like, Bronco, like, I'm going to be running a meet for the first time. What do I need to do? Because I think sometimes it's hard for people who coach, right? It's like you have that coach's hat on, and now you have to run a meet. It's different, right? Like coaching, you're on your athletes, you're trying to make sure they have a good day, but having an event, making it fun and enjoyable that people want to return to, that's a little bit different animal. What's your advice to people who are trying to run events?
You always got to keep in mind we call it the student athlete experience, but it's just the experience of the participant. I've been running events, athletic events, for 15 years now with college athletics. So, paying attention to detail is extremely important. I'm very particular with how I want things to look. I know Andy, when he's putting down the runway, he's making sure that sand is groomed. Nobody's walking across it, because nothing's worse than when you get to 30 feet on the runway and there's a kink in it. That's the worst possible feeling you can feel as a vaulter. So preparation is extremely important. There's a lot of work that goes into it, making sure that all your registration sheets are in order. Multiple copies are extremely important. Qualified officials and volunteers, number one. That is the number one thing, because if that meet runs slow, it affects everyone's experience, not just participants. It affects your experience, because you're going to be there longer. You're going to be cleaning up a lot later than you anticipated. Your spectators aren't going to have as much fun, because there's going to be a long time in between jumps. Pole vault's fun when people jump over the bar. It's not fun if you're just standing on the runway. Right. So preparation, having great qualified employees, like you might have to spend a couple extra dollars to get a good official. Spend that couple extra dollars to get that good official. It's not all about the money. I think that's where sometimes event organizers get lost. They all want to make their profit, and pole vault's not really that that world where you're going to make a big dollar off of it. You know, you're there for the student athletes. You want them to have a positive experience, and make it fun. You know, I love announcing the beach vault. You know, it's a lot of fun to be on the mic and being able to know the event. I know a lot of the competitors and coaches, and, you know, being able to joke around with them during the event gets the spectators engaged, having good music. You know, I sit down for 2-3 days in advance and start working on the playlist for the beach vault. You know, I make sure that, you know, the elite competition has a separate high energy playlist. And then we've got, you know, some different ones that we separate throughout the day. You know, while country music's great, and I love country music, not everybody wants to hear Tim McGraw when they're sitting there watching a pole vault competition.
Right.
It's not about you, it's about the crowd, making sure that everybody has a good experience.
So you bring up something that I think is a good point, because even I think about that for like my practice playlist. Like I have an Apex practice playlist, and listen, I personally like the songs that are on it, but I specifically picked certain songs that I think are conducive to practice. Like I feel like sometimes people are like, well, I love this song, so everyone else will. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case. I have other playlists on my phone that I like those songs. I would never put them in a practice playlist, you know? So I think that's important. Go ahead. I cut you off.
Little touches, you know, if you have the ability to announce, you know, different athletes. I know with the elite competition, you know, so I guess a big thing is have a good announcer. You know, have someone that's high energy, that's fun. You know, you don't want someone that's stiff. A lot of your athletic announcers, and now, or, you know, coming up to, you know, the runway, like it's boring. Like you want someone that's going to be fun, energetic when they clear the bar. You want people getting the spectators engaged. Being knowledgeable and able to express that and teach the crowd is important. I know in Rochester, they do it on the beach, and it's just, there's usually a festival going on. Half of the spectators there might have never seen pole vault before in their life. So you might have to explain some things here and there for them. But ultimately, being organized, prepared, and having good workers is the number one thing.
Yeah.
You know, that is the most important thing. Do your homework, you know, make sure you're not going to lose all your money, you know, paying for this, make sure you make a profit. But, you know, always keep in mind the experience of the participants and the spectators, and just make it a fun event. You know, I've been to a lot of different events, whether it be Akron, Reno, Jersey beach vaults. I've been to different, you know, I guess other street vaults and stuff like that. And the ones that are the best ones have a great announcer that plays good music, you know, that has good energy. Whether it's a kid jumping 8 feet or not, that still could be a PR for them. You know what I mean? Just because it's, you know, the middle school boys pit doesn't mean some of those kids aren't popping off and jumping foot PRs. Yeah.
So I think even like what you're bringing up is huge. Like, I think sometimes as pole vaulters, we become something like wine snobs. You know what I mean? Like you like me and you could probably sit and watch a pole vault meet, and if it's just a me and you talking, we'd be like, oh my God, that is trash. That is an awful jump. And
I would never say that, Bronco.
Yeah. And it could be somebody like jumping 18 plus, right? And be like, oh, I really didn't like his takeoff. You know, that was terrible, you know? But it's like, but the thing is, like, when you're announcing a meet, the thing is, it's like, no, one, like you said, you have to educate people. And then also, especially, it's like, okay, maybe it's a little bit different if it's like the top tier competition that you have. You could be like, oh, like they should have went up a pole and, like, you know, provide a little bit of feedback like that. But it's like, no, yeah, that kid that cleared 8.6, that could be a PR. Pump it up, you know, like clap it up for the person. Even if they didn't turn, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's supposed to be fun, like you said. The other thing that I was gonna say, and now I'm like you.
You're blanking, yes. Someone knocking on the door like they were me.
I'm blanking, but yeah, it's just you have to make it a fun experience. Oh, this is what I was gonna bring up, and I remember when we ran Pole Vault Club Championships here. We did it 2 years in a row. We didn't do last summer, but like there was a couple kids that no-heighted. And I noticed, right? So I pulled those kids aside, and I played a little dumb. I was like, oh, like, are you having fun? Like, you having a good experience? And like, oh man, I know height. I'm like, well, here, come with me. And I brought them to like the tent that we had like t-shirts for sale and stuff like that. And I was like, here, have a t-shirt on me. And they're like, no, I don't want to take it. I'm like, no, like it would be my pleasure. Like, please have it. I can't fix the no height, but I want you to have a good time. Here's a t-shirt. And I think little things like that can go a long way. Even if you notice maybe someone's not having a great time or something happened, you know, maybe you can't fix their performance, but you could make sure that they have as much fun as possible that day. And I think that's really huge, because I know running an event can be super, super stressful, but you have to always remember at the end of the day that it's your job to make sure people are having fun.
No, correct. And I guess I need to I need to be very clear. Andy Fetzner and Aaron Fetzner are the ones that run the Rochester Rockback Beach Vault. They do a phenomenal job of getting the t-shirts, getting the prizes that we give away. He has phenomenal awards. He gets a few sponsors that help pay for some stuff. All that stuff, Andy and Aaron do a phenomenal job. Andy's done this for years with the help of Tim and some other people. I was specifically just talking about the components that go into it. And you're right. Free giveaways, whether it's be throwing out t-shirts, just making sure people have a good time. And you're right, that athlete that no-hided still paid us $50 to $75, depending on the competition. And some of them, sometimes you're driving 8 hours. I know I drove almost 8 hours to one of the events, paying for hotels for the weekend. Like, it's an expensive event for not just for that student athlete, but for their family. A lot of times it might be their only family vacation they take that summer. So it's important that you make them feel like they got what they paid for out of the event. It's really important. As Americans, we talk about instant gratification, all that type of stuff. You also want to get what you pay for. You want to feel like you got a deal, if that makes sense. Different things like giving out that shirt to the kid that no-hided, making sure you have awards. Sunglasses are really cheap. Everyone loves a pair of those cheap sunglasses that might have like your own logo on it. So you you know what I mean? Just little things like that can really go a long way.
Yeah, that's huge.
I feel like we talked about so much today. We talked about training and recruiting. Now we're going on to events.
No, we covered a lot of stuff, and I'm very, very thankful for your time, Ethan. And I know you probably have to go, so we'll probably end the podcast right now. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anywhere? Where can people follow Susquehanna Track and Field on social media?
Yeah, so we have a very active Instagram page. It's Susque, SUSQUXCTF. I'm going to double check that real quick just to make sure there's no underscore in that. I'm pretty sure that's all it is. But yeah, it's right here. It's Susque XCTF.
Okay.
We also have a Facebook page. You can go to just look up Susquehanna Cross Country Track and Field. You can also go to our athletics website. But honestly, just Google Susquehanna Cross Country Track and Field. If you are a pole vaulter or even just any track athlete in general, looking for a D3 school in Pennsylvania that has great programs in science. My phone's ringing. In science, business, creative writing, journalism, all those types of programs. Let me know. My email address is Senecal at Susque. That's SENECAL at SUSQU.edu. At susque.edu. Yep.
Yeah.
It's been awesome talking with you, man. I feel like we talked about so much because we took 10 years of podcast and crammed it into one. For those of you that don't know, I did get on him quite a bit a couple weekends ago. I was like, dude, I've known you for 10 years. I've never been on your podcast. What's going on? But it is a unique situation. Me being the coordinator of the program, and being a pole vault coach is pretty unique. There's not many schools out there that have that. So I bring a little bit of a unique, vision to the program, and it's Susquehanna is a special place, as lots of schools are. But if you're interested, get a hold of us, follow us on Instagram. We're almost to, I think, 1,200 followers. So it'd be dope if we could get to 1,200, by the end of the week.
Awesome. Well, and I would say for anybody, I think that is huge. The fact that you are the coordinator and you have that pole vault background, as a pole vaulter, if you end up going to Susquehanna, you're going to be taken care of. And I always say that to all my athletes, because I know even at Apex, we have a certain system and we have our wrinkles that are a little bit different. But I always have advised people, it's like, listen, if you're going to school where there is a pole vault coach, they have poles, they have facilities, that's huge. And that's going to go a long way. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, you go somewhere where there is no coach or there's not a lot of poles, or it's a lot tougher, So, to end the podcast and let you go, just if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with friends. Also, you can subscribe on YouTube, Apex Vaulting, or check us out on iTunes podcasts. On Instagram, it's The Real Apex Vaulting. And on Facebook and Twitter, it's just Apex Vaulting. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you have any comments or questions, please email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com. Yeah, B just flew by. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ethan.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.